afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Level Up Cyber. My name is Tony Bryan and I am your host and Executive Director of CyberUp. Super excited about today's discussion. It's been a little while since we've taken a deep dive into the world of kind of skills development and I think, even really address kind of small business stuff today, but really excited to have Rachel Skillman with us today from SkillDev. So welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for having me.
So, the rule is we always got to get to know you a little bit before we start this. So I'd love to, for you just to take a second, introduce yourself, introduce your company, and a little bit about how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, awesome. So hi, I'm Rachel Skillman. I am the CEO and founder of a company called SkillDev. We are an organization that really focuses on what I think are the two big components of small businesses. One is your go-to-market strategy. How are you entering into the world of business? How are you approaching the market share that you are in? What is your brand, your identity, and most importantly, your story that can be told and shared and bring you to your client base. And then my passion project that I have discovered from working with so many small businesses is then your cyber risk. I personally think is essentially part of your go-to-market and business risk strategies there, because in this day and age, every business risk is, or your cyber risk is business risk, as Jen Easterly said so beautifully a couple of weeks ago. And so they kind of go hand in hand from my perspective. And so breaking into helping them outwardly present themselves, but then ensuring that we can help them inwardly protect themselves is kind of the two. They sound so juxtaposed, but we found that they marry together so nicely.
It's, and you and I talked a little bit before we hopped on. I mean, it's really hard for small businesses, right? We're a lot of times you're so focused on just capital and cash flow and, keeping the lights on and employees. And it's really hard to think, man, this one instance could crush my business. This one thing could do this. What are things that I should do, to protect myself? So oftentimes it is one of the last things for a small company to really embrace, because it's hard to imagine throwing, cash flow that you would need for other things at it.
Go ahead. The only thing I was going to say beyond that, I also find that for businesses that aren't cyber businesses, specifically for small organizations that don't have a background in cybersecurity, that word cyber or cybersecurity is so intimidating that bridging that gap is so hard to initiate. And even for some organizations that we've worked for that are cyber aware, as they would market themselves, there's still that they haven't necessarily done the base steps of what is my information security policy? What are my risks within my organization? And I think that's still intimidating to them.
Yeah. So let's throw a hypothetical out here, right? I am a small business. I happen to be in the great state of Louisiana, and maybe I'm making I'm 3D printing car parts, right? And I'm distributing across the country for here. And I really haven't looked at my cybersecurity stuff. And I'm looking for a partner, maybe like SkillDev, right? Where do we start with you in this process to kind of, to look and explore risks, opportunities, and things that we would be doing or need to do?
So one of the first things we do is consult with our potential clients as to, we try to understand their business model, because really for a small business, the biggest thing we want to protect is your cash flow. So what are the biggest risks that are going to prevent your cash from coming in? If a cyber attack were to happen, or honestly, if something by accident were to happen, it not necessarily be an attack, but I think also that risk of what happens if a system goes down that you're not prepared for. What happens if a employee gets sick and you don't have access to a system that you were prepared for as well? I think that technically doesn't necessarily fall into cyber risk, but it is your business and kind of cyber because it's technology and operational risks from that perspective. So we try and really step them through just asking themselves these questions, because I think that's the most intimidating part. What are you going to do when XYZ happens? What are you going to do when you lose access to this transportation system that you're utilizing for these potential reasons that could happen? What are you going to do if your database gets completely washed? Where do you find that information? If your cellular service goes down, how do you contact people? What is your backup plan? And so we really try and just sit with them in a meeting and ask them a bunch of questions as to how they're approaching these. And that's usually when they realize they haven't thought about those questions. And then we discover a plan of moving forward. And we often focus our plans on roadmaps of success. So my background is software development. And I'm a strong believer in what is your minimum viable product? What do I actually need to accomplish to be as minimally as minimally successful as I need to be right now, because I only have so much cash flow to dedicate to this operation. And then when do I need to reassess this? When is it time to grow? And identifying once you hit this, and sometimes it's a cash perspective, once you hit this valuation, we recommend you do these next 3 steps. Or sometimes it's once you hit this threshold of traffic here, helping them identify when you need to look back at this. So they feel like they're not just wasting resources that they don't have at this time.
So what you're describing is you serve as a coach, right? You're really coaching,
essentially coaching them through it. Yeah.
Through this. How, a lot of founders and, CEOs for organizations are prideful people. They don't want to look silly, right? And a lot of times they start things because they don't always work well with others and want to work for themselves. And it's okay to do that, right? So how do you help maybe some of these folks, leaders of organizations, get past maybe the fear of uncertainty or fear of like maybe not being the smartest person in the room, and to put some of that pride to the side and invite somebody in to have those conversations? Because I know I've heard time and time again from others that it's hard to have conversations with non-tech people about important tech things because a lot of times maybe it's the fear, sometimes it's just a lack of understanding, and sometimes it really is just some pride behind it. But so how do you kind of overcome some of that when you're talking and working with companies?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and we talked a lot about this earlier, but my passion is people. And so what I fundamentally recognize is everyone just wants to be heard and understood to the base components of peopling in life. And when you hit a point of lack of trust, it often is because some of it is, as you mentioned, pride. Some of it is just like they don't quite understand you. So why would they trust you? And we really try to break down the explaining and even go beyond that to showing them within their systems, or, during this conversation, showing them pieces that could be problems, or, why we're saying what we're saying or how it could impact them, and trying to really guide them through. We also often, this coaching is usually the second thing we do with an organization. Usually people find us actually to help with their brand and brand identities. And then beyond there, we've already gained their trust of, hey, we can help you get cash flow because we know that's what's the most important to you. We can help expand your cash flow and bring in customers. Now let me show you what you need to do with that extra money that you're bringing in to help secure that this cash flow doesn't go away in the future. So we kind of take those 2 approaches. And I think that's why from the beginning, it seems like these 2 things don't go together, but it really is the biggest way we've learned to gain trust of a small business.
I mean, it really makes sense, having, I don't want to say easier engagement. That wouldn't be as complicated that, to understand who you are makes that aspect of determine how do you protect who you are, I'm sure, a lot easier. And then,
yeah.
To streamline that ability of trust, because you are giving, especially small businesses are giving a lot of access to their networks and stuff to somebody who may or may not come in. And let's be honest, in the world of consulting and managed services, not all companies are created equal. Not everybody has everybody's best intentions. So there is a little bit of hesitancy there, especially if you're not in maybe a major city that is sitting kind of ripe and flush with lots of good options for managed services, maybe a smaller town or, rural community where you have limited options. So then how do you really find somebody you trust that can do your interest and help see your best interest? What is a piece of advice, one piece of advice you give to a small business of something that's a non-negotiable that they should do regardless of hiring somebody in to protect their networks?
Oh gosh. Non-negotiables should do. I think the big couple that I know about that I really focus in on is one, focus on your passwords. It's so easy to do. It doesn't take a lot. Please just secure your passwords. And make sure you're not reusing them, because I think that is the biggest thing I've seen. And really from small businesses, the amount of small businesses I see that are not only reusing passwords, but are just emailing or texting passwords between their team members. Like, if you really need to share passwords, use a password manager. Please be safe. Because that is one of the easiest ways to give away access to your systems. We had one client who shared their password with their team via an email, and they didn't realize that someone already had access to their emails and was just like watching it. And then their bank account was gone, and you're like, ooh, that's rough. But it's just so easy to watch your passwords and be aware of, how you're doing that. The second thing that I think is really important is, and I don't know the best way to say this, but really start that conversation of questioning throughout your organization. Is this the best way to do this? Is this the best way to be secure? What happens if this goes wrong? And as you create that culture of questioning and evaluating risk, you actually set yourself up to be more risk tolerant. Is that the word I'm looking for? I think that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, to be like better able to assess those risks in real time. And it really does create that culture, because you see in small businesses, they're like, we got this, we know how to do this. And they need that mentality and motivation to fight through the bunches of things that go wrong for the two things that go right. But in doing so, you kind of get this false sense of nothing's going to happen to me. And you really need to reevaluate at every stage what could happen to me so that you prevent it from happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think, my biggest justification for that is when a company says it's not going to happen to me, I think of all of the people on Facebook who are trying to buy a washing machine. They get scammed and taken because they're easy targets. And it's like, why would it happen to them? Right. Like, their reality is they're just a lot of bad people in the world. They want to take advantage of stuff, and they can, given technology. So, try to protect yourself and do small things along the way and make everybody around you better.
And the sad truth of cyber right now is it's really you don't have to be faster than the bear that's chasing you. You have to be faster than the guy that's slower than you. Because that's just the reality. There's billions of people that are not protecting themselves, and just don't be one of them. And you're setting yourselves up a little bit more for success. Now, I hope that's not the case in a couple of years. Like, I hope we can really just strengthen our security posture as a whole. But for right now, take the little steps. It makes a big difference.
I've always been amazed that there hasn't really been any security products marketed towards individuals. Like, everything is company or corporate, and we're all third party. Like, I would pay good money to be able to encrypt my data in a way and be able to control how I'm sharing that with other people, right? Like, in terms of emails and that kind of stuff, where it's actually you're taking some crypto or Bitcoin or blockchain type of technology that my data. So I own control. Like, that's the part where I think I'd like to see some more individual products available.
I've seen a couple come about, not from that sort of data sense, but especially as we hit the world of remote workers. I saw a really cool it's like a homemade firewall product that they create for you. And then it goes into like a managed service, monthly service that is specifically for homes and individuals. I'll have to follow up with that company name, because I met him a couple years ago in one of my small business bureaus, and I really thought that was cool. And then, I mean, you see a lot of protecting the big CISOs and CEOs, because, like, hey, we'll help come in and protect you. Like, I think it's Black Cloak that does that. Let's protect the individual at the big level. But you're right, from the individual level, I still think it's down to how can a company be able to afford that? Like, what is the financial barrier to get across where that becomes worth it for an organization to invest in? And we need to get that lowered, because it is important to protect people. And they just
LifeLock is our option right now, right?
Yeah, LifeLock is our option.
LifeLock is responsive, not proactive,
yes.
Right? So something bad happens, now I'm responding to making sure bad doesn't happen again. And that's not
proactive, and that's not going to protect. Like, your data has to go away for them to decide it's worth pursuing and helping about.
I would say it's $1 billion idea for somebody who can actually code, which I cannot. So Whoever's out there, please.
Yeah, we'll take it from it.
Go make an individual product that I could purchase. There's got to be a key that I can encrypt that stores on my phone that my data sits in that I give permissions to. Like that's from in my head of like, I sign up for this. Here you go. I go to the store, they ask me to sign up for their mail list and I give them my information. If I have a key code that, that does a thing in an RFID chip that shares that stuff, it also encrypts it and gives them only what they need to have. Like that's in my head, like that has to exist, but not the point of today's conversation.
Here we are building products.
So in the world, I want to make sure we transition because I know you work with a lot of people as well, right? And individuals in this. So we'll do a seamless transition from a corporate perspective to an individual perspective. So, I'm this company, I've hired an organization, they've come in, we've established a baseline, right? I know my framework, I'm either using NIST or CMMC or HIPAA, right? I pick my frameworks, I set my protocols, and I start delivering. Now it's like, well, crap, now I need to start hiring people to put into these jobs. And how do I do that? So, where do you start out, or where do you recommend for your clients to really start to say, okay, great, we're going to build your team, go. How do you do that?
Great question. I think in the world of small businesses, we really focus on helping people build teams from referrals at this point. I think right now that's one of the best ways we've found to find and get top talent. And honestly, I try to support those individuals that maybe are struggling in finding. You get a lot of people that have been laid off. And so I personally try and help out as many people as I can. But we really strive from referrals because there's no better assessment of a person's work ethic than what they've done in a job and how they're going to approach problem solving than how they previously have approached it. Now this gets into a really complicated, who do you get referrals from and how do you trust and build that point of network? But we really do try to utilize our network and the network of those that we know to help hire within our individuals.
I like it. So from the perspective, so now from an individual perspective, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm seeking out said company that's got their stuff together and they want me, right? So what advice do you give for me to get myself in front of those organizations, right? Because a lot of the times what you're thinking, and I know just from talking to a lot of people, they're generally looking at these large corporations, your Boeings and your MasterCards and these big mega corporations for that. But man, there's so many opportunities out there in small mid-sized businesses, right? And it's a different quality. But what advice would you give to those folks, right? Looking in, they've got their skills, they have a baseline, and they want to make their transition and break into it. Where would you encourage them to start and to get going?
Yeah. So one of the first things I encourage you to understand is what are you amazing at and what will never be you? And this is kind of how we've approached hiring conversations. This is a business coach that taught me this a while ago. She's amazing and I love her. But what are the things that you can't find better at? For example, I am really amazing at helping translate technical to business and then also communicate people within it, handle the team communications. You really can't find a better person than me at that. But I will never be your person doing the same thing every day. You just can't pay me enough money to do those things. And we actually find when you approach the conversation of, hey, I'm looking for a job, XYZ, these are the things you can't find better. Like, these are the things that I'm amazing at. Like, I can pick up a piece of technology and master it within a day. I can Python program like you wouldn't believe. I can build you an exploit that is beautifully optimized and just incredible. But I will never be able to manage people. I'll never be able to do XYZ. As you're communicating yourself that way, people think of jobs that they've heard of, or, oh, I know of this person that's doing XYZ, and that's actually exactly what they're looking for. Or, oh, I know of so-and-so who I'm going to talk to that's doing that. But communicating those two, what I'm good at and what I'll never be able to do, seem to be the perfect pair to help people find that relationship and networking piece. And that's, I think, what we've really noticed. And then the next thing is like, be willing to communicate that and talk to everyone you can. It's not often the person you know that's going to hire you. It's often a person that they know. So it's usually like once or twice removed within your network. So, as you're looking for opportunities, tell people, have those conversations. You don't need to blast it out to LinkedIn, but that's a great way to do it too. You could just, talk to people on the phone and mention it, and you'd be surprised what ends up coming back.
That's really good advice. Especially it's just the uncertainty and unknown, right? I think there's a lot of fear, and I think everybody, the majority of people automatically gravitate towards pen testing and SOC because it's the most notable. But there is a whole plethora of options and opportunities that exist out there within the world of kind of cyber, and I think even more broadly technology, right? So
I agree. And I think when you simplify it down instead of like what you're necessarily looking for, especially as you're approaching the small business, like just identifying what I'm good at versus what I'm not, then you'd be surprised what's going to come your way that might expand or lead you in some incredible opportunities, and not just focus you in on, oh, I wanted to be a pen tester. Like you may end up someplace you never imagined that could have been better than you pictured.
I landed a nonprofit 15 years ago off of a random conversation from a friend on my network who made an introduction, right? And even before you hopped on here, you're doing 3 things you never thought you would do, and it just happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think the common denominator there is, when you put yourself out there and you're open to opportunities, good things could happen as long as you're willing to accept the call, listen to the things that are being presented to you with an open mind. And I think, I'll just add another piece to add to that is finding people you trust is such an important thing in life, and having a friend and advocate who's going to be with you, in good times and bad. That's a really important thing. And the earlier you find that in your career and you can stick with that person, the better. I'm always a fan of that mentor-mentee relationship. I'm also a fan of, in technology careers, find yourself your recruiter, right? Find your recruiter who's really good and really thinks about you, and as opportunities come in front of that person, you're going to be one of the first people that they call, and at the top of their mind. And that's a proactive way. And then let's say the unthinkable happens, right? Like it's happening to a lot of people right now into 23 and 24 with downsizing of kind of tech jobs. You have a friend to phone that you could call and like, hey, here's an emergency. I really need some help, right? And that person's going to prioritize you because you've been nice and kind to them over a period of time. Relationships are important in anything you do.
Yeah. And they go, like you were saying, they go 2 ways. It's not that, oh, I don't talk to you until I need something. Like it is kind of, now I'm not saying these relationships for networking or I have to call you every day and give you some advice or something. You can go time between, once a quarter, twice a year, send them an email, send them a text, just thinking about you, or like you can do little things to nurture these relationships, but you're not going to be prioritized, just like you wouldn't prioritize the person. It's like, I haven't done anything for you, and now you're calling me up for a favor. Okay. Like I don't have time for that. So, the importance of remembering these people you're talking to are people. And they want the same thing you want, which is to just be acknowledged and heard and supported.
Yeah. So now we've got our system in place. We've got our people process in place, right? So what's next, right? Now we're staffed. We've got our technology. Things are moving along, right? Or seemingly moving along. What's our kind of cadence from there? What should we be doing to maintain that, that status of where we're at?
Yeah. So, we often next will focus on, well, how do we optimize what we've done to lessen the burden of keeping your systems protected? And then how can we, beyond that, what are the next check-in periods? Like we mentioned, we have that roadmap. So, when are we talking next to advance or upsell? When do we need to look at changes to what's been set up? That's often defined by the framework you're using, or the technology stack that you're utilizing, or what your business really does and needs to be able to do. But we really do try, and my goal for everyone we work with at SkillDev is that they'll outgrow us, and that it's kind of like the Hinge app, right? Like I look to be deleted. I'm really excited for it. I want to teach you. I want to set these systems up, and then I want to let you do it. because small businesses deserve to be let loose and go and make their dreams happen. And so really just acknowledging, what you need to do and when you need to do it. And then we're always here to help if you run into a problem. So, we kind of try to let you loose. And
I hope, and I feel like I'm kind of picking up, we're generally in tough times. Marketing's always been the first thing to kind of go for small businesses, right? Like,
yes,
let's do the thing that helps us generate revenue and not do that, which never has made sense in my brain. But it's
no,
always,
it never makes sense either.
and I would think that cyber or infosec is probably pretty
The
close
second,
to the list, right?
easily,
That's
yeah.
going to go away, and both of those, right, are have critical impacts or could have a critical impact on your business. And mindful that, hey, both are a cost and both are important, but like how do you build out plans or models that are within your budget, that are sustainable, that don't require a huge lift, to your point, that you can grow into over a period of time is really, really important. And I think having a good partner that understands that coaches you through that and kind of really navigates that piece, because there are opportunities and programs that exist that can give you a solid foundation of how you protect yourself. And there's a lot of programs like CyberUp that do skills building that will offer opportunities for you to get cost savings for finding smart people that you'd be able to bring into your staff. So, the perception of that it's going to cost you a ton of money, it's going to cost money because everything costs money. But in the grand scheme of life, what's the balance to really find a good outflow of cash that gives you a good return and, at least a peace of mind that you're going to sleep well at night, that you're protected.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's always the hard thing to communicate. We're like, well, it's going to cost you a little money now, but if you actually run into these problems, it's going to cost you a lot of money and could potentially cost you your business. So I had a coach once advise me that the best way to sell skill dev is to basically sell that fear of like, you're going to be hacked. And I hate that mentality because I don't want to build trust based on fear. But to some extent, there is that reality of like, this is the world we live in. If you are not looking out at what is happening to other organizations and your competitors and how things are shaping up day after day in the cybersecurity world, you will be a target. So it's definitely hard to approach at this point.
Yeah. So let's, from an individual perspective, so we've got the skills, we feel comfortable and, how we present ourselves, what are ways that you would advise for these individuals trying to break into that? Where should I be going? Where should I be looking? Like, where can I find opportunities, to put resumes in or to meet people?
Yeah. I think conferences are always great. I found a couple of my opportunities actually from conferences, as long as you acknowledge what you're looking for and what the conference is about. So I guess my big take is know who traditionally comes to the conference you're planning on attending. And, if you're kind of looking for entry level roles, maybe you're not diving into RSA conference and, maybe you are, but what are you attending to find the people you want to really get hired by? And doing that background research makes a big difference based on the roles and what you're looking to do. But even beyond then, there are so many groups and communities that you can join and be a part of, from Discord communities. You just do some Googling online. Hey, I'm looking to talk about hacking. I'm looking to find some pen testers, and you'd be surprised what you can find in your area. The local DEF CON groups, if you're really looking to get into that kind of stuff. And the quicker you can get in front of someone in person, I found that's really the best way to truly make opportunities happen for you. Conferences and groups and that kind of things are really what I found best. LinkedIn's always great, but I find those other groups work even better.
I've been struggling just the online content, right? There's like COVID crushed a lot of our conferences here in the St. Louis market, and they're starting to pick back up a little bit. And then we have a great tech council here that's doing a lot of events, and it's just, I think people's priorities have changed of how they're networking and things. And there's just I think like there's a different level of intentionality that everybody brings, not just for work, but also just their time, right? Like I know
Yeah.
for me, if I know I'm going to have an event on maybe a Thursday night, I'm going to plan a day to go do all my things outside of my house that day and plan multiple meetings. So I'm trying to maximize my time and effort instead of, leaving my house one time to go somewhere at 7:10, turn around. Yeah, it's not effective, or it's not, it's not good use of time. So everybody gets the same last question. It's a really tough one. It's really not. But what advice would you give to somebody to level up their cybersecurity career?
The advice I would give to someone to level up their cybersecurity career is don't overlook the foundations. I've noticed more and more as people start getting into cybersecurity and technologies, they're really focusing on some of the cool latest technology. How do I program an AI? How do I build this really cool machine learning data model? And they forget to identify, how does this work? What am I actually functioning and doing? What are the bare bones components that make this happen? What is the foundation of the technologies that I'm leveraging? And I've seen that gap kind of hit as you start moving up in cyber, where those that have that strong foundational knowledge can do some really innovative pieces with their technology background versus those that are just looking for the cool next thing. And I think that goes beyond those that aren't as technical. Understanding the basics. You don't need to know how to do it, but understanding a little bit more as to what an API actually is. What does that word mean? Oh, it's just two pieces talking to each other. Okay. And being able to dumb it down to that foundational level, I've seen be very strong in helping you scale up in the cybersecurity space.
I think it's a great point, and I think it gets harder and harder
as there's so much more.
As things with AI advance, like I know that's the big pushback. Where I live, our school board's a hot mess, and so their current push is we got to get away from Chromebooks. They're making us dumber, right? We got to get back to books and start reading paper. And I'm like, that's fine, and I understand the kind of the core concept of that, but at the end of the day, we're avoiding the future. The future is technology. And so we've got to get more creative, to your point, of how we are teaching students and kids that not to be afraid of AI. It's okay. It's a good thing. And it's not intended to replace learning. It's intended to be a supplement to your education and like understanding how to use it better. But you still have to learn the basics of things and understand how they all work.
Well, and I think the last piece I'll stress there is I think as we see AI coming out, it mirrors a lot of what we saw with computers, right? Like there was that initial fear of how's this going to take over everything. And I mean, computers added just as many jobs as it took away. And so it's really like, let's get on that bandwagon but let's learn better from what we did at computers. We didn't necessarily teach how do we secure them at the base in the beginning. And now we're in AI and it's like, let's change that. Let's make that difference and that change as we're growing into. But that's my spiel. Ending spiel.
Yeah, no. Well, Rachel, I appreciate the time today. I mean, I appreciate what you're doing with Skill Dev. Great information. We were talking, we intentionally we matched today and not even intentionally. So it was great. But great advice. I encourage everybody, if you listened, I'm sure you'd be open to connecting. And
yes, please. Please connect, ask questions. I'm here.
Yeah. But thank you so much, everybody. Have a great week. We will see you next week for our next episode. And until then, see you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.